time here. Let's kind of start at the beginning for you. You arrive at Appalachian State. Presumably somebody either emailed or walked in and handed you a sheet of paper and said, Doug, here are your future football schedules.
Right.
So you saw what you were working from as a base at that moment. What did you see with the way scheduling had been handled till then? And then based upon that, how did that help you form your short and then long-term scheduling strategy for App State football?
Well, I saw that, going into the FBS, and I liked the strategy that was here at Appalachian. So if you look at 2015, you had Howard here, then you went to Clemson, went to Old Dominion, had Wyoming. So basically, the philosophy was, in my opinion, but just by looking at it, was play an FCS at home, peer on the road, peer at home, and go, play a game to get, whether it's an opportunity game, the way I call it, an opportunity game, an opportunity to get paid, and an opportunity to beat somebody on a national stage. And so I like that philosophy. But then as you dig deeper, I looked at our season tickets. And I noticed that from 2007, I did research back to 2007, which was the high water mark for season tickets at Appalachian. And then I looked at in 2015, and we decreased season ticket base by over 50%. And so one of the things I looked at philosophically is how can I help us generate revenue through season tickets, which is a key piece of what we're trying to do. Financially, we've got to sell season tickets just like we got to sell T-shirts, just like we got to sell hot dogs. We got to bring people up to Boone to watch games. It's good for our community. It's good for our university. It's good for our athletic department. And so I noticed that we had a hole in 2016 at that time. So what we did is we started kind of go back to the sales days. We just went cold calling and tried to call programs that we thought from a Power 5, called Power 5 programs we thought we could get home and homes with. And so, thankfully, we reached out to Miami, and we were actually calling Miami and some of these others for on down the line. But, because that was a philosophical change. As we saw what Charlie and my predecessor done with Wake Forest, had an ACC team coming home and home. That was a good deal for us in 17 and 20. So then we said, let's see who else we can get to come home and home, and what's the profile of those programs that'll come home and home. We called everybody. At least everybody east of the Mississippi that we thought would be a good home opponent, and some told us we're crazy, and some said let's look at it, and then Miami actually said, hey, we actually need to do something in 16, and so we were able to get that deal done in 16, and I think as soon as you did that, as soon as you're able to do that, that added validity to what we're doing, that we could get a program like Miami to come, so then it helps the next call, and it helps the next call. The fact that Wake Forest was already here helped, but it really started with a need to sell more tickets, and really to increase the relevancy of our program, and use that word a lot. But we're a great FCS program. You go to FBS, nobody knows what you're going to be, and then you want to be relevant immediately. And part of that is bringing the Hurricanes up here, selling it out, and I think that answers your question, hopefully.
Yeah. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about home and home series more detailed in a second, but let's kind of, again, chronologically look at things the way you were looking at them when you first got here. So you have a unique attribute that you bring to this program, in that you have sat on the Power 5 side of the table at Missouri. So go back to your days as the Missouri guy and not the App guy. When you guys were scheduling as a Power 5, what were the strategies that came into play there, and how did you look at out-of-conference games with a program like at App State, a G5, somebody you look at bringing to you to come play? What were the profiles, to use the words you used, that you're looking for in that kind of partner? And then in a minute, I'm going to ask you to kind of flip the table around and say, okay, well, understanding what a Power 5 is looking for, here's how I started the positioning process for Appalachian State.
Well, I think, certainly when you look on the Power 5 side, and it depends on where you're at on the Power 5 side. You can look at whatever the top number is programs. They're just going to buy. They're just going to buy. The checkbook doesn't matter at some point in time. I mean, they have enough resources where they can go ahead and buy people, and they don't ever have to think about going on the road, really, to a Group of 5 school. At Missouri, we were just coming into the SEC, just coming out of the Big 12. So if there's, 65 programs in that, in the top Power 5 or whatever the number is, there's tiers within there. And you can look at the top tier, they're not going on the road to play anybody that's in a G5. And you can look at the middle tier, maybe you might get them to consider. And then you look at third tier, there's some there that will start considering. So you started seeing at that time, and we even started contemplating it at Missouri because we didn't have a lot of money. And so we were trying to figure out, all right, how could we negotiate a deal with certain schools? And we might have done depending on whether you call them home buy or 2-for-1, we might have done some of those. Or we'd look at programs that we could actually afford to get them to come in and play. And there's also tiers of what programs demand to come in and play. So there's a tier within the group of 5 in terms of who's going to come where and for how much. And I think the common denominator there at Missouri was as well as who's going to sell tickets. So you want to bring in a name too if you can. And so a lot of about that time, you started to see some other schools doing some creative scheduling, whether it was 2-for-1s or home buys or trying to find a home neutral site or those type of things. We tried to get creative. When I was there, we did a deal with BYU where we played BYU in Arrowhead Stadium, a nice neutral site game in Kansas City. You're always trying to get creative and try to figure out how you can generate revenue for your program. Now, knowing that they're just like here, we always want 6 home games. So you only really might have one to play with if you're trying to figure out to juggle some games. So in Missouri, who can you afford? How does it fit within your schedule? And you'll see in the SEC, play some games in September. There, like here, we try to get all non-conference knocked out in September. Knock it out in September, and then you can play, your conference schedule, hopefully with some buys along the way, because at the end of the day, the goal is to win the conference. And so that's what we looked at. But we did start looking at some creative games there where we would actually go to a G5 school and play. And, I think when we were there, we went to Memphis. Can't remember what the deal ended up with Middle Tennessee State. I think they're doing one that's down the line where they go up to Middle Tennessee State. Worked on some of those in some neutral site games.
Okay. So after you start thinking about knowing firsthand the tiers and here's what P5s are looking for and here are the ones that might be candidates for us, how did you turn that into positioning Appalachian State as one of those G5s that you want to have on your schedule? How did you turn that into your positioning for our program?
Well, I think the college football playoffs help too. So it's not the same as basketball where you have quality wins, but there is you want them when the committee at the end of the day starts looking at the college football playoff. You got to have quality wins, and everybody wants to be in that Final Four in college football. From the Power 5 group, right? Well, the group of 5 too, but right now it's really the Power 5 setup. And so it wasn't as easy, and it's kind of a catch-22 because it wasn't as easy early on because we didn't have the track record other than the big Michigan win. So people knew us from the Michigan win, but they also knew us from an FCS program. So from an FBS level, we didn't really have that cachet. So we could go get games, and then what I've found over time is, and by over time, it's just a short period of time of 3 years, but the phone calls are a little bit different when you win 3 bowl games and you've won 11, 10, and 9, so people want to play, a good group of 5 program, a good quality group of 5 program, but not too good sometimes. So we're kind of edging into that, too good at some level. We've had some schools that said, hey, the group of 5 schools, we're not scheduling it, and that's why you and I talked before, but I think I can never thank the folks like Blake for Ron Wellman, who really started it for Appalachian and came up here and played us or scheduled us, and then Blake James, right? And there's more that are coming. And so part of my sales pitch has been, first of all, in close proximity. The folks in close proximity is as good for college football. It's good for college football in our state or our region, and it's good for both fan bases. And by the way, you don't have to spend a bunch of money traveling. It's not you're not taking your student athletes and putting them on a plane. You're putting them on a bus for a couple hours. It's way easier on them from a scholastic standpoint or academic standpoint, as well as travel. In addition, one of my sales, probably my most prominent sales pitch to all of these schools are, we're going to bring fans. We're going to bring fans. We are going to sell tickets at your place. Appalachian is unique in the group of five, in my opinion, that we have, if not the best fan base in the group of five. It's right there. And so my pitch to everybody is, we will sell tickets at your place. And, some of them, most of them I'm talking to will sell tickets here. We saw it with Wake Forest. We know we're going to see it when we go down to Wake Forest. We'll see it when we go to North Carolina. We'll see it when we go to East Carolina. And that's why, not to elongate the answer, but that's why when you look at the Miami game, no, excuse me, the East Carolina game, is, there's not a lot of group of five schools, kudos to us and East Carolina, that can get a game in a pro stadium and expect to at least fill it. I mean, expect to sell enough tickets that it's worthwhile for everybody. We're not going to fill it. I hope we do, but the expectation is with those two group of five programs that we're going to have a great crowd there. And so when you look at the schools in the state that we've been able to get, it just makes sense.
Okay. Let's talk about single Power Five games. Penn State this year. You've got Texas A&M that was recently announced. You're headed to Wisconsin. Those are great games. Now, I think maybe the let's call it more casual fan might refer to those as money games, and certainly the financial part of it is significant. But that's not all the benefit that you get from something like that. As you said, you're looking for exposure on beyond just a regional basis, really a national basis. Gives you the opportunity for potentially a big win on the right day under the right set of circumstances. Branding has been a huge focus of yours since you arrived here for all of App State athletics, but certainly football is a baseline for that because it's so recognizable. And then there are recruiting implications to these kinds of things too. The ability to tell a kid, hey, we're going to be going to Penn State during your career, or Wisconsin, or Clemson. There's some draw in a lot of different areas of the football program. Talk about those games for their value beyond just being a payday, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll start with a quick story that's true and significant. So when we go play at Tennessee, this is, in 2016, we're going to open up at Tennessee. And so then the SEC network moved that game from a Saturday, or ESPN via the SEC network moved that game from a Saturday to a Thursday. So in essence, you got Appalachian State, Tennessee kicking off the college football season in 2016. I think we were up against another SEC game that night, but there's only 2 or 3 games on. So right there, from a relevance standpoint, you're on national television kicking off the college football season, and you'll see a theme here. And then we actually have an alumnus watching that game. We take Tennessee into overtime. We have an alumnus watching that game. Hadn't been involved with our program at all. And it turns into, a year later, the largest gift in the history of our athletic department. And it all started from, an alumnus watching that game on television. And so there's Appalachian kicking off Thursday night. And then all of a sudden the next year, if you look at it, and this goes back to what you and I were talking about with, being a relevant group of five program. And so now all of a sudden you're going to go to Georgia and kick off the 2017 season, and ESPN puts you in prime time at 6 o'clock. 1.7 million viewers, and here you go again. So Appalachian brings a brand recognition to the sport of college football that not just is recognized in Group of Five, but it's recognized in Power Five. So when we're playing these guys, and you're playing Appalachian, there's a good chance that game's going to be on national TV. That's good for us. I'm not sure what will happen with Penn State, but there's a good chance that'll be on at some level of national television. So I think for us, you want to make sure that these opportunity games, like we mentioned before, it's opportunity to put your fans or put your program out there, put your university out in front of millions and millions of people. They do spots on Boone. They show our great university, our community, and it adds relevancy to your program. And you got to be competitive. And so you saw 31-10 to Georgia. You know better than me, but when you look at Georgia statistically over the year, we played them, I think, in terms of total yards, third best of the whole year. And that's obviously a team that went to the college football playoff. You look at how we played Tennessee, taking them into overtime. And certainly, Clemson, the year we played them in 2015, that's the year is that the year they won it? They win it in 2015?
I think that was the year they went and lost.
Yeah.
And then they won the next year, but still virtually a national championship caliber program.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Clemson, Tennessee, Georgia, Penn State. And so that's a part of it is you want to go play the best too, and to your point about recruiting, you want to talk to your student athletes, you're going to go play the best. You're going to go play in Happy Valley, which is one of the iconic venues in all of college football. Same with Between the Hedges at Georgia. Same with Tennessee. Same with Clemson. Same with Texas A&M. Same with Wisconsin. So we try to be strategic as well and put our student athletes in our program in the best light that we can on a national stage, but also go play some of these programs that are really iconic programs. I think that hopefully that helps.
Yeah. I'll shift gears with you for a moment, and we've kind of really pushed on the Power 5 games. Let's talk a little bit about peer scheduling within G5s. I think one of my personal beliefs, and we've shared this at my website quite a bit, is I would like to see us start to schedule truly peer G5 programs. And those are, I'm gonna start using your terminology of tiering off G5. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of G5s, and then there are some real G5s that kind of come to the top of the list. Certainly App is among those. Programs that are more prominent of late might be programs like USF, UCF, Memphis. You mentioned Middle Tennessee State, Western Kentucky's generally been a high-performing G5. And I think certainly Appalachian, without question, belongs in that conversation. Some of it's probably just opportunity and scheduling for those types of things. But do you see a strategy or a path to a point where you might start seeing games against not just G5s who make geographical sense, like a Charlotte, like an East Carolina, like a Marshall? Mm-hmm. Certainly they make some sense because not only are they in-state, or Marshall's a longtime rival from back in the day. From back in my day, Marshall was the rival. But do you see an opportunity maybe to go to some of these other maybe AAC or Conference USA programs and maybe establish some home and home opportunities with a program like that?
Yeah, no, I think and we've had those conversations with some of the schools that you mentioned. Kind of our first look at it was to be geographical. Play Conference USA Charlotte's right down the road. It makes complete sense for us to be playing Charlotte home and home, and we can do it every year. We do it every year. East Carolina, same thing. That's why that 4-year series was really good for us, and I think East Carolina as well. Same with Old Dominion. They were at about the same spot we were, just starting a football program in the power or in the Group of 5 FBS. So that one made a lot of sense. I think now. Marshall was the first series I signed when I got here. So, we looked at that one, and that became open to us 21 and 22. So that one made a lot of sense. Now I do think, to your point, you'll start seeing us. You want to play the best when you can. Sometimes those peer home and homes are harder to get. I say harder to get. I mean, it's hard to get Power 5s to come here too, and it's hard. It's sometimes it's hard to find opportunity games too, but. We have talked to a lot of the schools you mentioned about trying to get something figured out, and it just hasn't worked from a scheduling standpoint. The other thing I'll tell you from football scheduling, when I arrived, go back to your first question, 2015 was set. We had that opening in 16. We had to move a lot of stuff around to get Miami, but we had 2 games in 2019. One, actually, we had a verbal agreement with the Power 5. Or we were negotiating contracts back and forth. So I wouldn't say verbal agreement. We were back and forth. And that one we said, and it was just straight by. So we actually pulled that off the table, and we took those 2. We knew that we already had TTSU at home and Charlotte at home. So we already had our home commitments taken care of. So we had 2 opportunities to go on the road. And the way that I looked at that for 19 was those were 2 opportunities for us to kind of make some hay setting up the rest of the schedule. And thankfully with that, we were able to work out the UNC game. So going to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, getting them back here in 22 and going back there in 23. So then when we looked at the second game, we talked to South Carolina. And so for us, it's not ideal to go on the road. So now we go back to the philosophy when I first got here was, like we mentioned, FCS at home, Pure on the road, Pure at home, opportunity game for money and exposure. We've changed a little bit to really what we'd like to do is Power 5 on the road, Power 5 at home, FCS on the road, or FCS at home and Pure at home. And some years when you have to go on the road, the Power 5s and the Pure would be at home and vice versa. So then what we did is we got South Carolina. So we're going to go on the road to South Carolina in 19, but that sets up South Carolina coming to Appalachian 2025. And nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, that's a big deal, getting an SEC program to come up to Boone. And so that was a deal that we've been working on for a long, long time. And, it took a lot of twists and turns, but that's another athletic director, Ray Tanner, who, when we sat down and talked with him and Charles Waddell at South Carolina, they couldn't be more gracious on how do we figure stuff out. In terms of coming up to Boone, they realize it's 3 hours up for them, 4 hours up the road maybe. And same, we're going to bring fans there, they're going to bring fans here. So that was a deal in 19. So then we had to go on the road in 19, twice at 2 Power 5s. And we were already set up to go to Wake Forest in 2020 as part of a Pure Home and Home. So when you do those Pure Home and Homes, it doesn't give you a revenue generating game either. So that's why you had to go to Wisconsin. I know I'm off tangent on the group of fives, but those, when you started doing those and you had 2 Power 5s in 19, now we got to go on the road 2 Power 5s in 20. It limits your ability to go get those Pure games. So that year we already had UMass scheduled, so we kind of scheduled out the Marshall game, as we mentioned, in 21-22. We had an Akron that's coming back in 22, so that was already pre-scheduled.
That was a game you had to move at one point to make the Miami thing happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then really, for me, the first time that I could start looking at those peer series that you speak of is in 23. Because we first of all wanted to take care of 19 and 20, and everything else from a peer standpoint was pretty much set. So now, with college football, and you even look at in 2023, we're at UNC, you got East Carolina here, and at Wyoming, we're trying to get we need to get a peer to come here that year, and that's hard. And there's no FCS in that year, so 23, you'll be at UNC, East Carolina, and then you got to get an FCS. 22, we don't have an FCS program, so you're starting to see us gravitate, depending on the year, a couple Power 5s on the road, trying to get set up, which is in 22, no FCS, but you're at North Carolina here, at A&M, at Marshall, Akron here. It's a pretty good home schedule. So those schedules for the peer games that you speak of, we've been talking 23 and beyond. And sometimes they're already full, or sometimes we can't get to work out. But you'll see us do some of those.
Okay.
That was a long answer.
You know what? But it was a good answer because it kind of got to the full 360-degree purview of what it takes to do that. I mean, you're all the way out. You're 5 years down the road before you can even really start scheduling anything other than an FCS home game. So it's important that I think that you gave us that full perspective. Let's talk about the South Carolina a little bit, because you're right. I think it's one conversation you have with an ECU or a North Carolina about coming here to play, because it is, technically speaking, just down the road. Marshall has a history. There's a tradition there between the programs, so probably a little easier to schedule something like that. What does it take to get a South Carolina, though, to your point, to get an SEC program to say, yeah, you know what, it's in our best interest to go to Boone and play that game? That's different from having that conversation with the guys in Chapel Hill or the guys in Greenville. What do you think it was that made Appalachian State and coming here an appealing choice for them?
Well, I think you're right. Each conversation is different, and like I've said before, I think it's each athletic director is different in terms of how they're running their program, how they want to schedule. And for us, I think with every one of those athletic directors, they made it easy to have the conversation, or at least they were gracious enough to say, yeah, we'll entertain that conversation. So when you go down to North Carolina and say to Bubba, would you ever come up to Boone? It could be a quick no. And thankfully, they said, "Hey, let's have that conversation." Same with South Carolina and Ray Tanner. Let's have the conversation, see what it can look like. Now, I think, and I can't put words in their mouths in terms of why it makes sense for their program. I think for us, like I mentioned before, our sales pitch is certainly Boone's a destination. I mean, this is a destination. People, thousands and thousands of people come here every year as a destination. So we've got a great community. We've got a lot to offer. It's a bus ride. Your fans can access it easily, and it's a place your fans will want to come. So, there might be other places you could go play that might not be a destination place like Boone. So I think that's appealing. I think, go back to what I think Appalachian State is a good opponent, no matter whether you're Group of 5 or Power 5. The stadium's going to be full, no matter what. And we're going to bring a lot of fans down to your place. And so I think those are the similar conversations that I have with everybody is we've got a great facility, great fans, passion, the energy is going to be here. It's easier for your folks to get here. We're going to treat them well when they get here. And it's going to be full, and it's going to be electric, and it's going to be as electrifying as any college football stadium or game. It's just on a smaller scale when you're playing here at Kid Brewer. So I think all of those are the things that I talk about. And I do think it takes the right person, because I've talked about all those things with lots of athletic directors, and they've told me no. So I think it takes the right person, program, just to entertain the conversation, and we are thankful because we think a lot of people could not do it. I think that's the easy answer. The easy answer is no, we're not doing it. But I think that's why I'm grateful just for them, not because that we need to be grateful, but to even have the conversation and say, all right, yeah, we'll go up to Boone. Blake James might call them, hey, we'll go up to Boone. Mark Rick was a brand new coach. They came up here and played, right? And it was an electric atmosphere, a heck of a day for college football, no matter who you were cheering for. Same with Wake Forest here last year. Heck of a day for college football, no matter who you were cheering for. Place was packed, passion, pageantry. It was everything you want in college football. It'll be the same when those folks come here, and it'll be the same when we go there. And our fans will go to a big-time place like Columbia, South Carolina, and go to watch an SEC game. Go to Chapel Hill and, wear their black and gold and proud in that stadium. Same when we go down to Wake Forest. There's so much passion in college football that games like these just increase it. And it's rather than go to a half-empty stadium where people don't care, you got people that are passionate about their programs at both places. And I think that's good for our student athletes, first and foremost, our fan base, our universities, and the sport of college football.
You spent some time talking about the atmosphere here at Kid Brewer Stadium. It's a good facility. It's always electric. You talked about it on a smaller scale. Let's talk about facilities as relates to scheduling. Obviously, facilities enhancement is another big pillar of the program that you've put forth for the athletic administration in general, and Kid Brewer Stadium is obviously going to be a centerpiece of that. As you think about making facilities enhancements here in the stadium, how do those things? I don't know. Enhancements can take on a lot of different avenues. Could be just, more seating, could be more amenities, could be newer facilities, could be a new field house, whatever it is. There are a lot of different things that go into enhancements. Could just be services within the stadium. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of different directions you can go in. How does marrying your facilities vision with your scheduling strategy, especially longer term, how do those two things marry together, and what's important there?
Well, that's a great question, because we know that continue to be competitive, we had to enhance our facilities. The athletic center here at Kid Brewer is as nice as there is anywhere at our level. It's beautiful. But we still, had a smaller video board. We have a 40-year-old building in Owens Fieldhouse in the end zone. That's inefficient to run. We have a track around our football stadium. There's very few in the country that still have that. And so we know that we need to make enhancements, but we also know that unlike some universities, philanthropically, we just can't raise a lot of money to just go build a bunch of buildings. So what we needed to do is, is get really strategic with exactly what you're talking about. So right now, we've been approved by the Board of Governors for a $38.2 million end zone facility that will enhance what we're doing from sports medicine, what we're doing from athletic training, what we're doing for banquet and meeting space in the high country, what we're doing for orthopedic physical therapy and sports medicine care, what we're doing for academic learning for student athletes and others, dining for student athletes and others. We knew we couldn't build that. And it's one of those, just by raising money philanthropically. So if you look at it strategically, this is how we looked at it, is that starting, because part of the financial model of that brand new building is going to be some premium club seats. They're going to help us pay off the mortgage on that building. Okay, so the building is going to be ready in 2020. Right now, it's going to be up for the 2020 season. Well, where the strategy comes in is starting in 21, you're going to have Marshall at home. In 22, you're going to have North Carolina at home. In 23, you're going to have East Carolina at home. I'm not sure about 24 yet. And then in 25, you're going to have South Carolina at home. So when we go out to sell those club seats, and we put that 5-year window up, that's a pretty appealing sales pitch. And so that, in essence, to your question, the schedule, in some ways, is building you a $38.2 million building. You could certainly make that case. We have to sell those club seats. We have to sell season tickets. We have to sell T-shirts and hot dogs and soda, just to run our program, let alone enhance our program. And so really, strategically, that's how we've looked at it. If you're going to want people to invest in what you're trying to do, you got to give them something to invest in. And I believe when you look at this schedule piece, you've absolutely given them something to invest in. If you're a college football fan and you want to come watch great college football, look at our schedule, this home schedule in Kidd Brewer from 21 through 25, and you're going to see for those 5 years, Marshall, North Carolina, East Carolina, South Carolina. That's pretty strong.
So I think, down to my final question, I think you may have just answered it better than you could have answered it had I asked you the question directly. As you address the fan base, this gives you the opportunity to kind of reach a lot of the fan base at once, and you kind of make a summary promise and appeal to them for here's why the investment in Appalachian State athletics and specifically in Appalachian State football makes a lot of sense for you. What would kind of be your your kind of motto statement when it comes to here's what scheduling is going to be, here's why we're doing it, and here's why you need to be a part of that?
Well, I think I always start with, we're just a small part of a great university, but athletics has the opportunity to engage the entire university family, from friends to parents to alums to current students to corporate partners to donors that just want to support a program up here in the high country. So we have a unique ability to engage an entire university community. We're a small piece of it, but we have an ability to engage a big chunk of it. And so with that, we all, and then when I say all, we're all part of this, right? And people like to be successful. You want to be successful when you come to this university, get a great degree, get a great job, take care of your family and be successful. For us, the athletic department wants to be successful as well, and we think if we're successful, then we can continue to shine a bright light on the university, and we've seen that in the last 3 years. Like you and I talked about earlier, if you look at what was the most highly viewed Sun Belt game last year, it was us against Georgia, 1.7 million. Who was the highest Sun Belt rated bowl game? It was us against Toledo, 1.whatever million, 1.3 million, I think it was. So we have the unique ability to highlight our university to millions of people around the country and show them not just Appalachian State University, but Boone, Watauga County, the high country, et cetera. So I think for us, we have a unique ability, but we need everybody to help. We can't do it alone. And so that's why we've tried to make it easier to invest in what we're trying to do. We've tried to make it as rewarding to invest in Appalachian State athletics and bring a positive reflection of the university. And I think we're doing that. And then when we start bringing in some of the scheduling pieces, like you saw, I'll never forget, as long as I live, when we had Miami here and the student line was up through the neighborhoods. It started at the Gated Kid Brewer, went all the way up past the Quinn Center up in the neighborhood. I'll never forget that. That's unique. We had over 12,000 students come watch the Miami game. We had over almost 12,000 students come watch the Wake Forest game. That's kind of the whole university community coming together. And I think, like, it's kind of cliche, but everybody says it takes a village. For us to continue to be successful, everybody's going to have to be part of it. Whether that's season tickets and whether that's club seats, whether that's, following us on Twitter, following us on Facebook, being part of the conversation of how does Appalachian continue to excel, whether that's talking about us in high schools when we're recruiting, there's so many different ways to help, but all of those that want Appalachian to be great and enjoy it when we're successful need to continue to help, and one way is to come up here and watch us play and support our student athletes.